Aloha Live, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this Aloha Friday. I'm so happy to have you. I'm still waiting on our guest, but that's okay because we can run over some preliminaries while we wait. First of all, a big mahalo to Honolulu Cookie Company, which is providing the cookies for tonight. It's a little tin can, 9 cookie assortment, and somebody tonight is going to go away with this delicious cookies. Obviously, growing up in Hawaii, I eat these all the time, and I get them shipped to me now. So they're that good. So I'm hoping everybody will chime in. Let us know where you're coming from, where you're tuning in from, and we'll be uh, choosing one person uh, out of the group tonight to get that too. So tonight we have scheduled women empowerment, and I'm like I said, I'm waiting on my guest. That's fine. We're gonna. Hey, Sarah, thank you for joining me all the way from the UK, and thank you for sharing this live session. I saw your post. I thank you so much for supporting us and pushing out the information. I hope you enjoyed tonight. So, Paula's out there. All right. I don't see her yet, but I'll see. Um, so tonight we have Ella Staniak, all the way from Australia. She was with me back in April 30th to be exact. So if you want a prelude to tonight's session, then you might want to go there after the show and look at all the information she shared at that point. And I'll keep a tab here on the communications to see when she's ready to roll on in here. But like I said, thank you everybody for joining in and being with me tonight. Hey, Chris, my brother, aloha. Missed you, man. Missed you. It looks like you've been busy, but that's all right, man. We are praying for all you guys and hope you're all okay. Um, so, and the reason why we're focused now, we had this scheduled already, but it's funny how all things come together for the good. That's how I believe it. And hey, you like my shirt, Byron? Thank you, Byron, for being with me, and my daughter, all the way from Abilene, Texas. Aloha. I love you. God bless you. And so back in April, I had her on to specifically talk about women empowerment. At the time, it was just a general topic. It's something that we should be talking about all the time because there are still countries, and I'm sure you watch the news, that that is not the case. Right? I just saw a video, as disturbing as it is. Um, as disturbing as it is, they were painting over the images of women, and you know, different cultures, different beliefs. As an American, I'm not going to judge anything. What I'm saying is that a woman brought me into the world, right? So in my heart and in my mind, there's already an elevated position for women because no life comes to Earth except through women. So, well, human. Let me just say that human, human life. But in any case, it was sad to see. It kind of broke my heart because I also saw videos of women crying and wailing, and it just breaks your heart. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring in Ella and let her greet you. Ella, thank you for being with us today. Early morning for you, almost evening for us, a day behind. But thank you so much for being with me today. I was just kind of warming up the stage here for the topic of tonight, which is women empowerment. So happy to have you back. I was mentioning earlier. It's been since April 30th since you came on, and I'm entreating everybody to go back to that first episode that we shared, the Friday Aloha Live. it's still impactful. So thank you, Ella. Welcome. Give us a couple of words on your side.
Good morning, Enrique. How are you? I'm so glad to see you again, my friend. It's always such profound privilege to have a conversation with you. We always tend to discuss important topics, but also topics that we are truly passionate about.
That's
Thank you
right.
for your warm welcome. I cannot wait to dive into the conversation. Women empowerment, women's leadership, women standing in their power. Count me in those conversations.
And I know that that's where you thrive. So thank you so much for taking the lead in that arena. That only look. I could empower women, and it may and the message may come across as appreciative, but I cannot talk for women, right? And you're taking that banner and you're running with it. Not only are you empowering women, but you're showing them how and why they should be empowered. And so I thank you for that. We have a lot of guests tonight. I'm so happy, all the way from the UK, all the way to Hawaii, and all the way to Australia, right? So we're running a big, part of the world here tonight. So thank you all that are joining us from the U.S., from Europe, and from the Far East, and my families, my aloha, my ohana over in Hawaii. Thank you so much. So I earlier today, earlier when I started, I was showing this beautiful case. It's a metallic case. Inside are 9 delicious cookies. it it's taking everything out of me not to open this thing. But this is going to one of our guests tonight. It comes from the Honolulu Cookie Company, and they are. I have chosen them as the gift bearers for participants in our show. So tonight is the first time we give it out. So somebody is going to go away with that. And I'm so delighted. But let me tell you, I bought 3 just in case, I I got the munchies. But so thank everybody for joining us tonight. So Ella, I was briefly mentioning the things and the images that we're seeing in the news today. Obviously, the happenings in Afghanistan are devastating to say the least. The impacts to human life are grave, but there's a section of the human life out there that is suffering like no other, and that is the women. And so I'm so happy that we're actually talking about this tonight. There may not be much that we can do to impact Afghanistan. There's a lot of cultural, things, and there's a lot of religious things. So there's a lot to work through. But what I do want people to know is that is not the norm, and never should it be. I spoke about the value of women, how I value women. My queen is the first woman. Uh, Unfortunately, my mom passed in April, but my queen, that's
Oh,
it.
I'm
That's
sorry
the
to hear
top.
that.
That's the
Yeah,
top, right? So, so and I wish that every man could get to where I have gotten to, and believe me, it's been a struggle to get to that point because we just get raised in so many different ways. But I'm happy to be here. So, what can you tell us? Have you been seeing that? What's in your heart about that going on right now?
absolutely. It is a another moment I feel in humanity where we experience, sorry, I should say witness. Most of us are not experiencing it right now, but as a society, as together, one community, as a society, we experience moments of terror, where unfortunately, as you said, human life, human value is endangered, and it's not the first time, and I believe it is not the last time, sadly, uh, one of our communities, one of our global communities,
Yeah.
unfortunately faces immeasurable crisis. Look, I'm not a person who binge watches news every single day. However, I do stay up to date with everything that is happening in the world in my own way, whether this is reading quickly news on my phone or
Right.
just quickly checking the news. So I am very aware of what is going on. I'm just going to say this, specializing in behavioral change in the last nearly 15 years and understanding where human behavior comes from, understanding also the gravity of fear and how it impacts us, and how it does truly have long-term effect on how we perceive ourselves, where we position ourselves in the world. My heart absolutely goes out to all the people who are facing fear, loss, grief in all places in the world, including Afghanistan, but also all those who have been impacted by COVID, those people who have lost their jobs, their family members. I am so sorry about your
Oh,
loss as well,
thank you.
Enrique. Um, we need to understand in the context of what is going on in Afghanistan, but also equally those people who are truly struggling with the economy changes, yet another wave of social restrictions,
Right.
lockdowns, you name it. It is that one fact, and it is that where we, the environment where we exist, the environment where, more importantly, we grow up, directly impacts our ability to of strength, power, our identity, and with that our resources and how we position ourselves um, in that environment. And in usual, we're talking about two states, which is either a state of disempowerment of state or a state of empowerment. In such tremendous experience of fear, um, terror, and and pain, it is nearly impossible to feel empowered in those moments. So I feel that as a global society, for those people who are in states of disempowerment, terror, and fear, those who possibly aren't need to come together and help and assist and support. So it is important to have those conversations. And I thank you for bringing these conversations to light. In a context of COVID and Afghanistan, it is no longer a conversation about, gender-based empowerment or not. It is just a conversation about us people coming together, finally, globally, and creating that sense of togetherness, being there for others. For millions, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of years, there has been a case where some people have access to greater resources and others don't. Then some people who had access to resources no longer do. I feel
Right.
like it's a great conversation to have about what the world can do together, what the highest decision makers or the most powerful decision makers can do to help those less fortunate.
Yeah, and I agree. There's been a lot of comments. I've been popping them up here, but you're talking about the opportunity to do something when you can. And Sarah shared here briefly that she wrote a letter, simply wrote a letter to help a family, uh, with children. And so thank you for that, Sarah, for using your ability and resource at the time, right? It doesn't have to be financial, it doesn't have to be political. It just has to be something that you can do, right? Something that you can do. And so that's wonderful to hear and see. And I mentioned Afghanistan because it's the freshest thing out. We just had Haiti go through a 7 point plus, you know, earthquake that just devastated them once again. I mean, there's just so much turmoil at the current time around the world, let alone a pandemic at the same time, right? It's just like it seems like a game show that was here in the U.S. It was called Whammy, right? And they were like no whammy, and it's just like one after the other. So that's just as a backdrop, because I really want to dive into the intricacies of building up a woman to the point where she's empowered, right? Because that's really the case right now. Whether you're here in the States, in Australia, in Afghanistan, there are going to be certain regional restrictions. Like I mentioned earlier, like there's a religious restriction. There's an authoritative restriction. Some countries have them, some countries don't. And even in the countries that think they don't have them, they're still there. So just think about that. When you think you're free, you're really not free, because if you were free, you would not feel, as a woman, you wouldn't feel like that at work.
Hmm.
That's yeah.
Absolutely.
So if it's really free, you wouldn't feel like that. So it's not free. There's certain restrictions out there that are imposed by generational things, people, the way they think, and all that thing. So I have a woman. She's ready to say, that's it. Today is it, right? And let me tell you, a man could say, hey, today is it, and it might not be it. But a woman says, today is it, you're done. So, so we have that scenario. A woman gets to the point where, hey, I'm ready to stand on my two own feet now. Um, uh, but there's just nowhere to go. I mean, I think it was almost like a military person coming out to the community. Here I am, and you just don't know where to go. So, what would be some of the first things this lady should be thinking about?
You have touched on so many different points. I'm kind of being pulled to so many different directions.
Pull one.
Well, let's acknowledge the first part of uh, the the opening to this discussion that you chose. Yes, there are so many religious, cultural, um, ethical, moral. There are just heritage based. There are just so many factors which, as I mentioned earlier, determine our sense of identity. And we just need to acknowledge, from a place of completely neutral approach, that where you grow up is your norm. Because as a little child being born pure, innocent, but very powerful and curious to learn, you are born to an environment which, well, besides simple instincts to survive, which is to receive love and to have safety, besides that, the child learns everything from the environment. It looks at parents or guardians' behaviors and it adopts it as its own truth. Environment directly molds our identity. That's a fact. That's science.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, we don't have consciousness or awareness to filter through what we choose to adopt our truth. Everything becomes our truth. So we use our senses, our sense of seeing, hearing, tasting, feeling, to create sets of beliefs, behaviors, responses to environment. And that's how our personality forms. Our emotional filters, our sense of identity. So all the statements, I am, I can, I have, or I cannot, I shouldn't, etc. All of that is being formed in childhood. And it might seem unfair, but most of our personality in the context of basic filtering of the environment is truly created between the age of 0 to 7. And there are some schools which even say 0 to 4. So it's quite unwell that that short period of time truly determines most of our behaviors and also our self-belief for decades and decades and decades to come. So unless a person goes through inner work and does true deep inner work on themselves and understands themselves, dives on into the journey of self-awareness, a lot of people run their life on default strategies, default behaviors, default elements of identity created in childhood. So that's number one. So yes, culture impacts that, religion impacts that. The I don't want to say the quality of upbringing, because their perfect parenting doesn't exist, but how we perceive the close environment, whether there was safety, whether there was love, whether there was a sense of belonging. So all that truly impacts a man and a woman. But where we come into the difference, I'll go into a second part of the conversation, where we do come into a difference between how possibly men and women have positioned themselves in the workplaces, in leadership, in sense of power, decision making, you name it, is that for many, 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 many years, we have had a very primer perception that men are the providers, the decision makers, the protectors, the hunters. I don't know how far back you want to go in human history. And so in the workplaces, in leadership, and today still, uh, in corporations, organizations, we have more men sitting at the boardroom, in a boardroom table, or at a boardroom table, I should say. We do have oftentimes still industries which are male dominated. So there is that one factor. And now women are entering those workplaces for the last few decades, steady and slowly. But this is where the conflict comes in. I believe this is the question that you are asking for, right? How do women now stand in their power? Since we do want to have, and we do have in many countries, equal rights to do so. Now that we know that our identity as a person is formed in our childhood, the best step, the very first step to take is to go through the process of inner work. And I believe that it has to be assisted, it has to be guided. We can truly give ourselves a permission to unpack our childhood with a professional, to understand where our disempowered states come from, so we can address those states and create new portions or elements of our identity, those elements which are necessary for us to achieve our dreams. This is where we can get in alignment in between who we are and who we need to become in order to achieve our dreams and aspirations. There's a lot to unpack in that context. So go ahead, Enrique, and ask about
Yeah,
anything you want. I'm
yeah,
trying
no,
to keep it as general as I can to give our incredible audience today as much information as I can. So take this conversation wherever you wish to.
yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. No, I was just trying to summarize in my head, if I was to say, okay, 3 points to get you where you need to be right from when you say, hey, I'm done. I'm ready for this thing. It's the first, ensure your environment is right. I had a person tell me, I can't this, I can't that, I
Yeah.
can't this, I can't that, I can't that. And I said, hey, change your environment. Well,
Hey,
none of my friends, you know, none of my friends changed. Nobody around me is of that type. And in my head was like, get new friends. Get new friends. There's 7.8, 7.9 billion people on the earth. Get a new friend. Change your
absolutely.
environment. Change your environment. It's one thing you can actually control. Now, you can't change where you live unless you have the resources to actually do that. But in this case, you don't have the resource. Change your environment. You can say no to people. It's amazing, right? So change your environment. You also have to figure out who you are. You got to figure out who you are because you got to have a point A. If you don't have a point A, you can't get to point B. So, and then start deep diving. Now, this is where I want to spend some time because the deep dive can really get scary. From the
Yeah,
time we are kids to the time we realize we're hey, look, we got enough. We had enough of that type of life. It's a long time and there's a lot of history. So let's talk about the deep dive, because it could be scary for a lot of people.
absolutely. And I just want to say from truly place of openness that anything I either teach or share, it's not just educational background, but true life's experiences. So I get it. Deep deep dive is scary. And here's catch 22. But I do hope that it's not going to turn people away from stepping into that journey of diving deep into discovering their power. When you live your life just wanting to, let's say, have good quality of life, good love relationships, good quality of health, good job or a good business, you live your life with the level of awareness that you have. In other words, you don't know what you don't know. And then what happens in a lot of cases is that people begin having greater dreams
Mm.
and go, actually, I am right here. But what I want is down here or up here or on the side here. And here's the thing, we dive into that search for our power, and suddenly a sense of resistance or conflict raises because suddenly we realize that our environments aren't supportive of our dreams, or we are gaining our sense of power, which changes a lot of dynamics in our relationships, personal or professional, because we go through this inner work and we begin that inner transformation and we are excited about it, but sometimes our environment doesn't support that. Friends go, hold on, what are you doing here? What are you talking about here? This is what you want? These are your dreams? I think you're too much of a dreamer. That's unrealistic. You want to quit your good, stable job in order to launch a business? That's irresponsible, friend. Or even in our close relationships, our, as you mentioned, love relationships, we step into a greater sense of power or we accomplish something, and then a partner isn't supportive of that out of their own fears or insecurities, you name it, for whatever reason. So environment is so important. And then a person is left in conflict. Do I pursue myself and do I pursue my dreams? Does that mean that I have to let go of some of my relationships or some of the points of safety that I have, which is my current job, or maybe my current house, or maybe my car, or gosh, this is really uncomfortable. This is when a lot of people oscillate. I know I have throughout my life in between. Okay, well, I step in my power and I have what I want and I pursue, meaning I'm happy to let go of a lot of things. But then, boom, we resort back to the comfort and holding on to the old elements of our life and our identity. So here's what I'm trying to say. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes the fact that you will want to step in your power and have more and create more because you will discover your passion and it will just make you feel good, it will mean that you need to let go of some components of your old life sometimes. In the context of environment, those people who truly love you and care for you, they will support you through to
Mhm.
hell and back. They will be there for you. Some people won't, and that's okay too, because when you're in alignment, when you know who you are, when you know what you stand for, when you know what your values are, when you know your direction and you have clarity of where you are going, that's all you need to know. It's all you need to know. In this place, there's no resistance, there's no conflict. In this place, you have ease, effortlessness. You can put your head on a pillow every night and feel at ease.
It's amazing when you get to the spot. And I just want to quickly just say hello to everybody, Gavin, Ricky, Sada, and everybody else that has chimed in. I had to scroll in there, but they've just joined us once again from Hawaii. Aloha, brother. And so it's amazing because, I went through that myself. There, I was hiding behind a lot of accolades and accomplished projects, right? Things that just elevated me quickly, but I didn't grow between those times. It was like I was skipped, right? And so there's like in school, you academically sound, you get skipped, but there's maturity that goes with each grade, and you skip that as well. And so in these cases where you're professional, you're knocking everything out of the park, and you're getting skipped through life, you tend to skip a lot of essentials. One of the things that happens when you deep dive is that you get those essentials back. And it's amazing because you fill in the gaps of the whole you. Sometimes you live through life with just a part you. That's why you don't even know who you are. You ask you, yeah, who are you? I'm Enrique. That's what they told me when I was born, right? Uh, but you really don't know who you are. And when you get to those moments where you can piece all that together, it becomes, I would have to say, the most empowering moment for a human to fully understand who they are, why they are, and what they need to do. Nobody could tell you otherwise. That's why there's some entrepreneurs that have left the 9 to 5 happily and have gone down what people say down the deep end. That guy is crazy. He left this for that, and then all of a sudden, because they knew they got to that point. In terms of women, I've seen the most empowered women when that just happens, and nothing can stop them. Nothing. And so, and culturally, that is something that some people don't like. They just don't like it. But it's because it's culturally, it's been brought up. I happen to love seeing my wife go boom, boom, boom. It's like knocking things out, and I'm like, wow, that's what I'm talking about, right? You, I love being around her because she is empowered. Now, the funny thing is that she's knocking these things out, but there's still some gaps. There's still some gaps, right? So let's talk about those gaps and how they really affect the women as they're progressing to this awareness of being empowered.
First of all, what you just said, Enrique, is really commendable because it takes a wholesome, whole rounded, integrated man to be in awe of a woman stepping in her power and in your words, knocking things out because it's attractive. Confidence is attractive. And so I'm really, really glad for you to be witnessing your queen, your woman to be knocking things out and for you to go, yeah, you go, darling. That's beautiful. Gaps. It is so true that what you mentioned just earlier, a moment ago, it is really, really true. there are, I feel, differences, hence my brand, feminine leaders, feminine leadership. There are differences in how, in between how men and women coexist with resistance or coexist with conflict, and how we, even in simple terms, how we make decisions in our life from a very primal, natural state of reverting to feminine energy or masculine energy. Both are equally really important, and it's not until we have empowered men and empowered women, healthy, integrated, wanting to support each other, this is when we see those moments which you described, which is like, wow, we are really on track here. Why? Because feminine complements masculine and masculine complements feminine. If it's just when things are done in one direction or in one sphere, we actually don't have full potential here. I'm talking about decision making in leadership. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about day-to-day life, everything. Both energies, both approaches complement each other. Those gaps that you are talking about, are you relating to women stepping in their power and when it doesn't possibly happen, or where the conflict is? Is that what you're relating to?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the very first one, gosh, haven't I experienced that? Until today, I do. It is the oscillating in between the sense of connection and disconnection. So, in other words, a woman feeling connected to herself truly feels, it's a lot of feeling, bodily feeling in decision making. And this is when we talk about being leadership versus doing leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So there is beautiful connection to intuition, knowing just that gut feeling is strong, the sixth sense is strong, decision making is on point. I'm just going to make decision from that place that feels good. It aligns with my values. It aligns with who I am. It aligns with, where I'm going. I have clarity. Let's go. This is where the decision comes from. Now, because feminine is all about democratic decision making, inclusiveness, including other people in their environment, gathering, collaboration. These are very instinctive values of feminine energy. When a feminine is in her power and she makes decisions and she pursues greater causes in her life, there can be a conflict, as I said, of letting go of old areas of life because it feels like not everybody's involved or included. So very, very pretty much the emotional struggle in between, okay, this is what I know is right, and this is what I have to do for myself. This is what I know is going to take us to where we need to go. However, that letting go is difficult. Feminine finds it very hard to let go. It holds on because it wants to hold on. It wants to love. It wants to nurture. It wants to make sure that everybody is included in the environment. So that can be a gap because it can be debilitating due to what we already discussed, right? That can be difficult. But on a positive light, those involved in a environment where the feminine is in her power feel that togetherness. There is a glue, there is connection, there is sense of love and belonging. So it is important. Where masculine quality, it's more about achieving, fixing problems, going from A to B fast, and so there is less attention being paid to the process. And people sometimes can feel left out, or in this case, it's not always about the democratic sense of including everyone involved. It is just about getting from A to B very quickly. It is not wrong. It is not what isn't needed. It certainly is needed. However, can you now see when the feminine and masculine come together? This is where the full potential can be utilized of men and women in decision making, in homes, in relationships, in all areas of our life. So that's the first gap. The second gap, and it is something that I think is predominant factor in my work of contribution to female leaders, and I have seen this time and time again. incredible, capable, intelligent, experienced women, knowing logically exactly what they are capable of, yet feeling undervalued, feeling still unseen, feeling at capacity, feeling like they are already handling so much and absolutely doing their best. But what they are giving out is not always reciprocated or acknowledged. And oftentimes, this on its own is not the case of the environment being unsupportive, but an internal sense of lack of support or internal
Right.
sense of the good old not good enough. There's imposter syndrome or self doubt. And when that happens, I believe we talked about it in Vol 1 in our
Hmm.
conversation. When there is the internal sense of either I am not good enough, or I am unsupported, or I am unseen, or I am not heard, when there is that internal sense, which is the element of the identity, there is no amount of praise or support, or there is nothing external that could come in and fix that. This has to be truly resolved through inner work. It has to be resolved through building self awareness. So it's a very important gap. It is one of the predominant drivers, um, which causes women not pursuing greater career benchmarks or milestones, but also women staying in environments which aren't supportive. So that's a big one.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder how many of those listening have had an issue with letting go. And if you've overcome that, hey, let us know in the comment section how you did that, you know, um, because those are one of those things. If you can't let go of one thing, you can't grab the other, right? And sometimes you maybe not necessarily need to let go of everything, but you must know what you need to let go of and you must do it, right? So knowing and
And
doing
when?
and when, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So,
It
uh,
is it is super important. I love this question. Ask again, Enrica. I'd love to hear
yeah,
some
yeah.
answers.
So if you have experienced problems letting go, but now you've overcome them, let us know how you did that. And if you're still struggling, hey, that's what Ella's here for. She it's earlier they said, "Hey, can
Absolutely.
I connect with Ella?" Yes. After this, we're gonna say exactly how to connect with Ella, and you can take that conversation on from there. And there was another comment of, "Hey, can we connect?" Yep. Just send us a DM connection request, and we'll handle whatever we need to outside of the show. You mentioned, that part where we have to go in and do some inner work. The inner work, and we mentioned earlier, right? Ted, that deep dive is scary. Inner working is one of those things. I have always said that if you want the true you, to understand the true you, then you have to dive into truth. You know, you have to dive into truth. Um, so I'm gonna throw this up because he's like, "Hey, I missed the first part." So the first part is, and we were talking about letting go of things that no longer serve us. That's just basically it, right? They don't longer serve us. They don't encourage us. They don't lift us up. Those are things that we just refuse to let go of, and they drag us down. They just drag us, or they keep us still, or they won't allow us to grow. So if you've had an issue with one of those areas, or just letting go of things that are not serving you, uh, and you overcame that, right? What did you do to overcome that? And if you didn't, then hey, that's what I was saying. That's why Ella's here. But so the element of truth, um, it varies for people because people have different perception of what truth is. Although it's either, and I tell my wife, I said, well, yeah, you said that, and that is a fact, but you're not telling me the truth if there's no way across. So I can give you a fact about somebody, but what truth does, it allows a bridge to come back to the right side. So fact alone won't get you there, right? You could be inundated with facts about yourself, but if there's no way across, and that's what truth does, it highlights something, but it says, but here's another way. So when people are in that position where they start looking at truth about themselves and start to, kind of rationalize what they have to deal with in order to get to where they need to, um, have you seen it hard to do? That the facing the truth, because I think out of all the elements that we can implement to getting to the next side, that that man in the mirror, that woman in the mirror, is probably the hardest thing.
It can be extremely exposing to one thing, look in the mirror and ask yourself very difficult questions like, do I like this person who I am seeing in the reflection? Am I proud of this person? Do I appreciate myself? I believe I'm not going to quote exactly, there was a very powerful quote that had a profound effect on my life by Byron Katie. More or less, the meaning of this quote, of this saying is, when you fight against the reality, you will suffer. So when you fight against your truth, you will suffer because you will be trapped in a perception of what you have created or what you chose to believe is going on. And you will never achieve the heights of your potential. You will never experience effortlessness in being in alignment and truly embracing yourself as a human being. So it can be extremely challenging to go into that deep dive. I wouldn't recommend that anybody tries to do it on their own. And also, there will be always a capacity when you, what can you do? You can read a book, listen to a podcast, you can meditate your problems away. This will only take you this far, or positive affirmations. It doesn't work. This has to be married to a facilitated journey to diving into the inner work in a safe environment, and it has to be guided for two reasons. Number one is that your conscious mind, your ego, is always going to try to keep you safe away from tapping onto truth and resolving problems.
Right.
And number two, once you tap onto those parts of your identity which you haven't acknowledged, and you are bombarded by the truth about yourselves, which exposes your decisions, whatever you perceive as your mistakes and how that impacted your life, there will be a huge emotional response to that. This has to be facilitated by a professional. Now, what is on the other side of that is true embodiment of freedom and peace with who you are. Isn't that the greatest gift of life? We go through our life with this sense of resistance. I know I have. Until today, I need to intentionally seek for clarity and effortlessness and ease in my life, because where there is resistance, where you are fighting or handling a lot of conflict in your life, it is exhausting.
Right.
If where you want to be, you have these dreams and visions and aspirations, and I highly recommend that everybody dreams big and has those dreams and aspirations personally and professionally, and they are, somewhere down the track here, but you are feeling distant away from the heights of your potential, when you are feeling distant away from your dreams and aspirations, goals and outcomes, That on its own is exhausting. The reality is that majority of our society operate in that realm. When I get there, I'll get there. There is such separation in between what we believe we can create in our life and and where we are at.
You know, and not just women. This is a human thing, right? Because 4 years ago, I went through a truth process. That's just that's why I was smiling while you were saying it was probably the most painful thing I've ever gone through, to the point where I ended in the hospital 3 times. That truth was so ugly. But once I got through it, and yes, it should be facilitated. I also do not encourage people to go through the truth of about themselves without somebody to lean on, because you will need it. It is, well, it is enough to get you to the hospital sometimes, right? Not everybody has a long history of not so good, but if we're human, any, you might have to deal with some not so pretty stuff. Uh, but on the other side, when you said that there was so much peace, I have never experienced peace like I do today. I have never lived a weightless life as I do today. It is amazing. When I'm talking about heaven on earth, it's about as close as that. And so, it's a beautiful thing. And oh, by the way, as a male, it also afforded me the opportunity to enjoy my queen as I should, not as the world had taught me. And so that's another element for those men out there, uh, because we're talking about women empowerment, but this is an element that will have both men and women at an empowered position in their life. So what I'm saying is that truth is a way to get to the real you, and then once the real you comes out, oh boy, I mean, talk about. I remember saying this to my wife after all that process was done. The world, and this was my exact words, the world has not seen this version of me since I was 5 years old.
Hmm.
And I was 40 something. 40 something years of living not the true me. Right. So I encourage, and at the time I was like, man, I don't wish this on nobody. But afterwards you realize, no, I wish this on everybody. I wish everybody would go through this. Yeah, it's going to be painful. Hey, and some people may not survive it. That's why we say you can't do it by yourself. You have to have somebody guide you and facilitate and encourage you all the way through. But once you do it, you can forget about it. It is the best place to be at. So we're coming up on the latter part, almost done here. And this is how fast these things can go when you start getting into the flow of things. But earlier we mentioned environment. We mentioned, deep dive. We mentioned finding yourself, and we're talking about truth now. What is one thing out of all the things you said? What is one thing outside of that that you would encourage a woman to start doing today to get her on this road of empowerment?
Easy peasy. And it is definitely look, it's one of the main three killer pillars to my feminine leadership methodology. It's a process which I take women in leadership through, and I have taken a handful of male clients through
Hello.
successfully. Hello. Um, and it is a connection. It is the strongest and the most important pillar of my own personal experience. Just like you, Enrique, throughout most of my life, I lived out of alignment, out of truth, incapable of embracing who I was as a woman. Because of childhood experiences and losing my parents as a teenager within 12 months of each other, my coping mechanism became avoidance. So I disconnected from myself, and I not fully disassociated, but there were times in my life when I ran such high extreme level of disassociation and avoidance that I made decisions that truly impacted my health, my relationships, and my career. I've got a very important message here. When you are not connected to yourself as a woman, you might make decisions at a detriment to your self-worth. You might enter workplaces which will not let you thrive and shine, which will not support your growth. When you are not fully connected to your power, who you are, when you are not addressing what's impacted you in the past and you are not resolving that, more than likely you will experience toxic love relationships, and you might stay in them out of belief that you don't deserve any better. That's a big one too. When you're not connected to yourself and you are not owning your power as a woman, you might also live your life completely ignoring your health and well-being. So today in my programs, I work on body, mind, and soul integration equally for those high power women to truly achieve the next level of trajectory in their career from a place of connection and alignment, but also equally in their personal lives. So the connection is something that we emphasize, yes, out of my own experience and truly knowing the importance of it, but seeing the transformation that it provides. I kid you not, Enrique, I have had clients within a short period of time of releasing 10, 15, 20 kilograms of body weight, not even being on a weight loss program. I have witnessed my clients signing up the biggest contracts of their life within a matter of months in their businesses. I have had clients restructuring their businesses and their businesses methodology and presenting their businesses and speaking about their business from a place of connection, owning their story, owning their journey, and creating extraordinary financial abundance. I'm talking about contracts, $150,000 contracts going from barely attracting any ideal clients to that. Just extraordinary. And that sense of connection, it's so transformative in relationships, because a woman who embraces herself, owns her story, and goes, so what? That does not determine my future. I own that. It made me, it truly made me who I am. But today I'm just going to share myself and show myself in my relationships. Love it or hate it, who cares? I love myself. But that allows true space for vulnerability, connection. There is such freedom in openness to your love partner, to your family members, to people who you meet. Because when you show your true self to others, they love you for who you are, not for who you show you are to them. And that truly transforms intimacy, conversations, sense of togetherness in personal relationships. So I highly recommend. So my one top advice is, whatever you do, create a sense of connection. At first, it might come through some morning rituals or morning routine like meditation or walk in a park or journaling or body movement. Just take the first step to get in touch with yourself. Before you even dive into the whole truth business, just get in touch with yourself and see where this takes you.
All right. So, hey, 4 tips and a last hurrah, and that's what. Hey, after this thing, after this thing, I'm going to get on the chat and kind of say hi to everybody. But let me tell you, Singapore, Australia, Hawaii, California, Pacific Northwest, all the way Florida and the UK was represented tonight.
Incredible.
Yes, yes. So thank you for that. Thank you everybody that joined me in this wonderful chat about woman empowerment. Lastly, Ella, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that before we go?
Thank you so much. And I also wanted to say thank you so much for everyone who joined us today. Thank you for taking time out of your precious schedule and sharing your time with us. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, more importantly. And if anything resonated, feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I always share free resources on LinkedIn. If you want to hear more about feminine leadership methodology, go ahead and check out my website. My website, single www.ellastaniak.com. So it's just my name and surname, and you can find all information there. And also get a free resource, which is 12 very short video series on 12 key pain points of women in leadership today. It will give you some good tips and insights on how you can step in your power and truly put the finger of what isn't in alignment and what you might need to pay attention to in your life.
Outstanding. Well, Ella, I'm gonna ask you to throw that in the chat afterwards so that they can get to you, uh, folks. This was a great conversation, Ella. Thank you once again for sharing all that information with us and dialoguing in this conversation. In the chat, I'm going to put this question, right. This is what's going to get you these cookies, right? Uh, what were the first 3 points and or actually the first 4 points and the very last tip that Ella gave that we had discussed today? The first person to give you that's who takes the cookies, and then I'll have you. I'll announce that on our next Aloha Friday Live. The winner will be announced, and those cookies will be headed to you. Mahalo, everybody. Thank you for being with us. It's been a treat, Ella, as always, a pleasure. Everybody have a great Aloha Friday, and we will see each other next week.